Hi there. Welcome to another edition of Cambridge Inside Out. I'm Robert Winters.
And I'm Judy Nathans.
And today is December 12th, 2017.
It's not much time left.
Not much time left in this calendar year.
17 went by like that, didn't it? Because I think 16 was such a horrible year that...
I think it was a horrible year in terms of...
Maybe it seems like it just went by.
The election results, I think it's,
but
it's sort of been like in this sort of state of purgatory, sort of...
So maybe that's what it is. It feels like we're still living it and it's over.
Yeah, we're just sort of eager to kind of...
God. I predicted he'd resign before January 20th, so I don't know.
Yeah,
you didn't,
we'll see.
I don't know.
Yeah.
He's definitely going to resign. He's not going to last 4 years. I say that right now, so mark my words.
Maybe.
No.
I'll give it a big maybe.
No.
So anyway, now that the year is winding down, we thought maybe we'd start off with just a few little quick... We had a very, very short meeting at the Sullivan
As they
Chamber
did the week before.
City Council meeting. It was
there public comment? Because I missed that part. It didn't seem to be...
I think there was exactly one person spoke with public comment.
Okay.
It was Heather Hoffman, who commented, said, "Oh, this is an unfamiliar thing. I usually speak last. I don't know how to do this."
Yeah.
It's kind of funny.
Yeah, that is funny.
Yeah. Anyway, it was a very short agenda. A few things that were sort of interesting. Actually, sometimes, I think I've kind of written down what I thought were the interesting things, and then somebody starts speaking to something completely different. I go, "Oh, that was kind of interesting." Things that I didn't really anticipate. One of the things, just sort of do it a little bit chronologically.
Are we referring to the city council meeting?
Yeah. So there's one thing that I always find interesting is, there were some appointments I think made to the Historical Commission not so long ago, and so there was a city council order asking for some legal opinion about whether the city council has any input into this, and I looked at it and said, come on, why do you even file the order? I mean, the state law and the Plan E charter is actually pretty clear. It says in a Plan E city, it's funny, the only thing that's unclear is it says the mayor is the appointing authority, period. But,
because a Plan E can have a mayor instead of a city manager?
I think actually there's certain, let me say it better.
Okay.
There's certain parts of state law that make reference to the mayor as the executive.
Right.
And then there's the Plan E sections of the state law that are very specific about the city manager being...
So Plan E form of government has to have a city manager.
City manager is the executive. So insofar as you do find many sections of state law where there's a reference to the mayor making decisions, it is to be interpreted as a city manager in a city. And one of the great bottom line facts is that, for good reason, it's the manager is the, quote, appointing authority, unquote, when it comes to all city boards and commissions.
Okay.
Right? And honestly, I think you shouldn't actually sit down in a city council seat unless you're kind of clear on that.
Yeah.
But every few years there'll be some movement. I remember there was, I don't know if it was the Cambridge Civic Association or it was one of these other entities, tried to, float the idea that maybe there should be city council approval of all city boards and commissions.
Oh dear.
And I thought,
God, nothing like hanging up.
That would politicize every single board.
And also endless discussion.
Endless discussion, and it would all be about, we have to make sure our side holds the reins of power.
It's bad enough they deal with curb cuts. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. Okay.
So anyway, this was in order asking, for a legal opinion on it, and the city solicitor, Nancy Glover, her opinion was just short and sweet. Pretty much said, look, this is what the charter says, and there's nothing. As she said last time, there's no gray area about this.
Right.
It's absolutely clear.
Right.
The only difference is that there were a couple of entities that were created by either special act of the legislature where it was explicitly laid out that there was city council approval. I think there's only two.
Do you know what those are?
The Cambridge Redevelopment Authority and the Cambridge Housing Authority.
Wow.
I'm pretty sure those are the only two. And actually, I think a very wise move the city council did a couple of years ago. They said, well, rather than just have the manager say, this is who I'm appointing to those particular committees, and then the council just said, okay, fine, we approve.
Yeah.
They made it a protocol to refer those two particular appointments to city council committees to at least have a chat about it.
That's smart.
So Kathy Bourne was reappointed to the Redevelopment Authority, so that had to go in front of one of the committees. And the same thing with, there was a relatively recent appointment to the Cambridge Housing Authority. But that's it, you know.
Yeah.
And, you know, I think it's sort of good. I mean, you sort of have to be a little trusting of the manager's judgment, but remember...
You get to appoint, I mean, the council does select the city manager.
I think some of the old Cambridge Civic Association people used to refer to that as the nuclear option.
Oh.
Say if the manager really makes bad appointments and you really, really get sufficiently steamed, you can threaten to fire.
But don't they have a contract? Or I guess, I mean, don't you have to find cause? They sign
No,
a contract, no? And he can be fired anytime?
Yeah, there is a contract,
Yeah.
so the city manager would continue to be paid. But it is still absolutely part of the charter that says that the city manager serves at the pleasure of the city council.
Wow.
So that if the council wanted to rise up and throw out the manager, even though they have to still pay him.
I was gonna say, it's like baseball.
It's like baseball,
Right, the
yeah.
manager? Yeah, okay.
Yeah, but the
Alright.
thing is that the manager could disappear at any meeting, really.
Wow.
I mean, they won't ever do
Has
that.
that ever happened? There's been threat, I know
there
with
have been-
who was, you know,
Yeah,
the
there
one
have
before
been.
Rossi.
Well, Bob Healy.
Bob Healy, there was always.
Right, now,
little-
Bob Healy left on his own terms. There was one city manager who was actually removed. That I know of. Other ones, I think they just sort of chose not to seek.
Before our time.
Not super long ago.
Well, I mean.
But anyway, it's a rarity, and it's usually very controversial when it happens.
Yeah.
So you know, and for the most part, there's really no need for it because the manager kind of ultimately, no matter how much people may complain about it, the manager sort of knows who butters the bread.
Right.
And you know, does make at least some effort to make most of the councilors at least sufficiently happy.
Yeah.
You know, and that's just the reality of it. Relative
Job
to
is a whole
reality.
lot harder.
Yeah. And another one of the items that was kind of interesting, to me at least, there was some money from various mitigation funds to support hubway bikes.
So those are for mitigation funds?
Well, it's either that when a developer gets approvals,
Yeah.
at some point they cough up some money into a fund that then pays for the installation of hubway stations.
So there's specifically, the fund is for transportation or mobility or?
Yeah, I think some of them may be, the arrangements may be different, but.
Okay, but that's sort of spelled out before, it's not just a general fund.
It's become pretty much standard practice now whenever there's any, especially larger development
Oh, I know
proposals.
that, I know about mitigation, but I didn't
Yeah.
know that they actually could be directed to specific things.
Yeah, some of it's actually, laid out right in the special permit that you have to provide things like, access to zip cars or transit.
Oh, okay, so it is kind of
discounts or
transit
whatever.
related.
Yeah,
All right.
and the hubway bicycle installations have become part of that.
So that's
package.
different than any monies they give for affordable housing.
Yes, that's that's separate. So
It's a separate thing. All right.
not really tied to the specifics of the
Okay.
development right there. But it was interesting because honestly, the money associated with it is always a little perplexing to me. So,
Yeah.
So I think it was pointed out that there was a total of 176 bikes spread out over 16 stations, right? And at a total cost, and this is just for one of the portions of this, of about close to $500,000, which
That's only for part of it.
that was part of it. There was actually two
Right, because there's
appropriations
two agenda items here.
totaling
Yeah.
nearly $1 million
Right.
for hubway bikes.
Right.
But it was interesting because when you do the math, simple
It's a lot
math,
of money.
it ends up working out. I worked at the back of the envelope calculation that the cost of providing one hubway bike, at least in this instance, was over $2,500 per bike.
But we're not paying that.
Well, we could argue that
it's coming from the mitigation
I think
money?
we paid for the original outlay when we first got it started, but now we're adding stations and others are paying for it. But it's like I think I paid $400 for my bike, so it's a little.
It's a different model of transportation.
I know.
Are they being used? I mean,
There was a little debate about that actually.
Well, Craig said he doesn't find a space for the bike when he has used it.
Or when he wants one,
or
he can't
when he wants
find
one,
one
he
that's
can't.
there.
He can't find one, which actually is a good thing. That means they're gone. But to then come back and have all the spaces filled,
Right.
I don't know.
I guess the issue is that if the hope is that these would become a part of a commuting option, and you're planning to commute in a particular way, but then the resource doesn't exist. It's sort of like saying that the red
Yeah,
line
but
is down that day.
But I'm wondering if commuters really use them, or if it's more, to me, it works best if you're not doing it every day, because you really would have to count on that being there all the time.
You know, it'd be interesting to get some
Like Craig has his own bike, and he says he doesn't use it.
And so that's what he'll just do,
Right.
which is what I would end up doing as well.
But I like the fact, I have a bike, but I like the fact, say maybe you don't want to ride back from where you
Or
are.
you don't
It's
have to
gonna be
worry about it
nighttime.
being stolen because.
Or whatever, you don't
want
wanna bring all that stuff, so-
Yeah. No, I understand the appeal, but it would be interesting, and maybe the
Yeah.
Hubway people have.
I'm sure they
Data.
have stats on how it's used.
Yeah,
That's what
you
it's
know.
all by an app.
I mean, Councilor
Right.
Toomey, for example, was bringing up the issue: are there any Hubway
Housing
stations
authorities,
at
yeah.
public housing? And
I
I
don't
think
know.
the answer is no.
Well, I don't know, have you done a survey?
No.
I mean, housing's all over
I mean, you
the
just
city,
walk.
and
Right.
Kendall must have a few, and it's not too far
There's
from
no
Washington Ave.
public housing in Kendall Square,
No,
but
but-
certainly.
Alright.
So if you go up around Washington Elms or Jefferson Park,
So if you
whatever
have to
direction
walk
you find,
3/10 of a mile, is that considered too far?
I don't know really, but it is
Right.
interesting because I think it's a fair question to say, well, what population does Hubway actually serve?
Well, then they do need, well, then they should have a survey, maybe the city does, about public housing residents. Would you like to see, because I'd like to see
right, 'cause
a demand before you say
That's
it
what I,
needs
yeah.
one.
So in fact, if
Yeah.
people, if there's insufficient demand in that site, I wouldn't just put it there
Exactly, just
because
because
it's
it's,
politically expedient to do
exactly, so
That would
that,
be silly.
and I think that's easy enough to do.
Yeah, no, I think so.
The housing authority
It
could do
would be
that.
kind of interesting,
Yeah.
just sort of see, you know,
Envision
what population
Cambridge
is
or the
there.
mobility should do something like that, right?
Should.
That's
You know.
another story, I don't know, but
Well, actually,
throwing it out there.
I mean, we
Maybe
could talk-
they've done that.
we can talk about Envision a bit here.
Yeah.
I can't go to the mobility meetings because I went to
Well,
one.
you're on like an overall committee.
I'm on
You're
the overall advisory committee,
and then you're on
I'm
which,
on the housing working group.
the housing work.
Yeah,
Okay.
I made a point of trying to go to at least once go to all of the working groups just to get
see
a
how
taste.
they're functioning.
Yeah, so there's one that's on mobility, there's one
Mhm.
on economics, basically economic development and such.
And do they report back to your overarching?
Well, they
Archie?
really report back to the overall,
Oh, the
the
consultants.
consultants,
Okay.
and then the consultants sort of, I mean, I always like to be really clear about it. Advisory committees are just that. They don't make
Okay.
decisions. So,
Right.
and they shouldn't.
Right.
So the
like,
consultants working with the staff, they come back and then they basically try it all out on the advisory committee, which gives, I think, pretty good feedback from a pretty reasonable cross-section of
So the
people.
report that they put out,
And then
the
they do
Cambridge Today,
factor
is
that in.
that a compilation of the different?
It's a bit of a feedback
It's a
mechanism.
so have you looked, I mean, I have it on my computer, but it's 128 pages, I haven't really looked at it.
Yeah, I don't know that if I've looked at the latest iteration, really.
Well, it was presented to the city council.
I've seen
that
the
was,
presentation,
okay.
but I think there's a bigger report at this stage.
128 pages, that's pretty big.
Yeah, now they wouldn't have presented that to the city council, I don't think. Is that?
Well, it's not available in print anywhere, but it was called Cambridge Today.
Yeah,
PDF, and
Yeah.
it seemed to have
I
many
I
pages,
glanced
so.
through it, but
All
I,
right.
you know. But so anyway, there are. I think it's for the most part it's been a reasonably good process. But and it's funny because at the time they said, well, this will last for maybe 3 years. Well, actually, we've already gone through about half.
It's a
of
year
it.
and a half, right?
So they're actually looking to have some finality to this sort of within a year. So we're actually getting to that point. The staff people, the consultants, they have some really good, smart people there who
Oh,
are,
yeah. Well,
actually looking at things. I think
I wouldn't
in
expect
the right way.
anything less.
No,
for
nor
what
would
we
I,
pay.
but I agree.
You get the best.
Yeah, but there are. I think when I visited, for example, the mobility one, you could see
Yeah.
that they're not. It's not just a cross section of people in the city.
Mm-hmm.
You do hear the advocates who are kind of crying for a bit of an agenda.
Right.
I'm on the housing committee, and it's a bit heavily weighted toward affordable
Residents.
housing advocates.
Okay. Do they have any developers, or are they not allowed?
They do,
Yeah.
but the thing is they're sort of a small voice.
Mm.
And I think that's actually I kind of like the committee, but there is a small deficiency in that it seems like whenever we're having conversations about housing, it's always about regulated housing and how to produce more of it, which is all a good thing and is
Yeah.
a need. But at some point, I would hope that this issue of housing in general, for example, if there's a lot of there's a lot of jobs in Kendall, or if there's new jobs going to be put together an alewife as part of that proposal, then one would imagine you'd like to have housing in relative proximity, not necessarily regulated housing, maybe some regulated housing.
Well,
and some
with the
unregulated housing.
inclusionary laws, there's going to be some.
Yes,
Anyway,
that's right. That's
so
right. Yeah.
I don't know.
But just in terms of where the, how, in terms of long-term planning, how would you do the distribution of housing?
Well,
right?
it seems to me they've already, they are talking about housing in the quadrangle, that area, and they're talking about.
Yeah, the provision of some housing.
You've got Volpe, I mean, that's Kendall, so it seems like it's all there.
Yeah.
And it's probably not gonna be a lot of it affordable in the sense of, there'll be some, but.
Yeah.
And
But I think what you'll probably find is that the housing working group will pretty much chime in favor of
well, maybe because no one
the
else
affordable
will,
housing.
I don't know.
No, I think maybe that's become the rule.
Well, because they know the other stuff's coming whether you like it or not. I
Yeah.
mean, that's how I see it, because
Yeah.
that's where the money is, and now with inclusionary zoning, so, okay, well, we have to do this, but we're gonna get this for that, so
Yeah.
I kind of understand that.
Yeah, no, I think maybe
Yeah.
it'll work out for the best, but it is kind of interesting to
Yeah,
watch.
I
So-
mean, the whole word affordable is
Right.
gotta be redefined.
Yeah, it's also interesting, there's this other little kerfuffle we've had develop over this past year over the bicycle infrastructure.
Oh, yeah.
That keeps, it's like a bad penny, it just keeps sort of popping up here and there, and there's conversations at the advisory committee, whatever. And I've kind of said this to a number of people, including counselors. I said that, that you can't get around it, just coming to some sort of better resolution of that, not just, our side wins or your side wins.
Yeah, well, I think, Denise has kind of pointed to that too, to
And
try to have some,
that's
cooler minds.
a conversation that's going to happen.
Yeah.
Now that's sort of looking ahead to some degree into the next
Yeah.
city council, because that's not going to be settled altogether by
No.
the Envision people.
No.
All right, no matter how you look at it there. So anyway, those are a few things that was happening there. They did have the folks from speaking of the bike infrastructure, they did have
Right,
Owen O'Riordan and John Ardon from Public Works and the traffic director and Louis DiPasquale sort of
Right.
addressing
the whole
the issue
snow
of how do you
removal.
deal with it, because now we've had at least, not the biggest snow event, but
It was 6 inches and it kind of melted, so, and some people, if they waited till the next day, it was kind of gone.
right, but those plastic posts that they stuck in the street.
Flexible posts, or flexi posts, yeah, that's what they're called, right.
But those, on the ones on Brattle Street that separated out the two-way
Yeah.
bike thing, so they've actually removed them for the winter.
I
The
saw.
bike lanes are still there, but the thing is they put in movable posts.
Oh, they're
instead.
movable, but I did see them
Yeah.
today, I happened to be walking on the
Yeah,
streets.
but the
They
ones that
put
are
it back.
bolted to the road, at least in some sections, are removed.
Oh, I thought they were all removable.
Yeah, ultimately they're all removable, but but that's different than one you can just sort of like move in a moment's notice.
Oh, okay.
Right.
Oh,
Just
so
move
some are
over to the
bolted more
side.
strongly. All
Yeah.
right. Okay.
So anyway, I think they're honestly, it seems to me like they're kind of inventing this as we go.
Yeah, because it's a new thing.
Yeah. I mean, how you actually manage this sort of the obstacle course that they put on Cambridge
Well, what other
Street.
cities that have weather like us have had this in practice? Isn't that something they've looked at?
Well, actually, I read
Denver,
in
maybe?
I don't know about the United States, but I think it's in Montreal. What they do is they just shut down the bike lanes for the winter.
I think they get more snow than we do.
They do.
Or
they
it
do.
stays on the ground more and with
Right.
the ice.
But I'm just pointing out as sort of
Okay,
one.
but I'd like to look at a more Pittsburgh probably has
Yeah.
a temperate, like a climate like
I don't know.
and they're supposedly
I don't
have great bike infrastructure.
Yeah.
So
But
I'm sure people are looking at this. I'm not bringing this up.
Well, the issue,
You know?
and John Allen has pointed out actually the one that's right across from us right here, where
John Allen.
he's a sort of an expert on
Oh,
bicycle
okay.
safety issues, and he's pointed out how when if the snow is piled up at the separators, and then when it
Oh.
melts, it drains to the curb, which is right where they're putting the bike lanes, and then it freezes overnight.
Craig
so
Kelly
it's all
brought this
ice.
up actually
That's
last
right,
night.
that's
And
right.
so what do you do about that?
Yeah.
But
So there's some
Yeah.
things that are going to have to be figured out. My sense
Right.
personally is that if they're going to be insistent on having these separation,
Mhm.
ultimately where the separation will occur will be up on the curb, and they will redefine curb lines. They will move those bike infrastructure up onto the curb,
what do you mean onto the curb?
like they have on Western Avenue.
Ooh.
Yeah, but I think that's ultimately where they're going to
Mm.
head with this.
So in other words,
So-
that's called something different. That's like a whole. That's not even a bike lane. That's a separate
Cycle track.
cycle
Yeah.
track. That's
Yeah.
what that is.
Yeah. So I'm actually starting to think that whether people admitting it or not,
Yeah.
that that ultimately what you're seeing with those PVC pipes and stuff is largely a temporary measure that ultimately will evolve, except that it's going to cost a bunch of money.
Plus, you're going to have to get rid of a lot of parking. So until we get to a more carless city,
And
I don't think that's.
And in that regard, I think rather, there's the sort of the radical view that says we're going to lead the way, make it hard to own a car, and then lose the car.
Right.
Whereas I think probably the way that works better is you say, well, we're already in a trend toward less car ownership.
Right.
Maybe one day we'll have the driverless vehicles if in fact they will come. I know.
Mm-hmm.
But if it were to happen, then, or if everybody's just taking little Ubers and whatever.
Who have to park somewhere when they.
But at that point, there's simply there's much fewer cars parked on the street. Yeah. In which case, it's very easy to go and dedicate the street without.
I guess so. Yeah, if they can identify the streets, because they definitely wasn't Western Avenue. Wasn't there parking on that side before? They had the cycle track put in.
Well, there is still parking
on that side.
Yes. Oh yeah.
Oh, okay. So further up. You're right.
So I just sort of think the radicals need to sort of wise up a little bit and realize that you don't have to be on the bleeding edge of things here. Right. Is that if you let a few years pass, what will start to happen is that it'll be easier to implement a lot of things because there'll be more space available. So.
Takes a couple of years though to put those. Western Ave took what, a couple of years, year and a half at least.
Well, and they did it as part of a larger project, and I think that's typically how it should play out.
Right.
Yeah. Actually, one of the interesting things up at City Hall last night I noticed is to the never-ending credit of the folks in the city clerk's office. They at the end of the meetings or at the beginning of the meetings, there's a little cart where they have all the materials for the meeting, and they collect all the binders for all the counselors, put them on the cart, and haul them back to the city clerk's office. So they already have the binders for the new counselors. They were actually on the cart.
My goodness.
Really? Oh yeah. And actually, I'll tell you another thing too, which is that in the audience, I don't know whether there was a particular reason they were there, but
did I see Alana and Sumbul?
Alana Malin and Sumbul Siddiqui
I saw them
were there
because I was watching TV.
And together, and it's kind of funny because during the political campaign, you make out this nonsense about there being like these two political, political entities, the Better Cambridge versus the Cambridge Residents Alliance, which is a ludicrous dichotomy. Yeah. So it's kind of nice. There's Sumbul and Alana, best of friends, and basically taking notes and learning what it's going to be like.
Best of friends, you know that for sure?
I don't know if it's their best friend, but they're sitting together and hanging and basically learning the ropes of how it's actually going to be. So I thought it was great, but it's kind of funny.
I thought that was them because there's not many people in the audience.
No, it was really, really quite great. Yeah. So. Anyway, another thing I thought we'd do, and we probably spend a good chunk of time on the second half hour here tonight, is to sort of take a quick look back at 2017. There's some highs and lows. It was an election year, so there was that to be sure. But it's kind of funny as time passes.
Election year for the council.
For the municipal election.
Yeah, but that was at the end of the year.
At the end of the year, but there actually were some significant things that occurred during the year. Some good things, some bad things, some in between, right? To be sure. And it's funny because when you come to the end of the year and the election happens, it kind of like swamps everything else, and you sort of forget everything. And I actually just sort of as a quick preview, one thing that occurred to me, I was talking to folks the other day about it. One of the most significant actions the city council took, actually among several, this term, council term, but really culminating in an action just this year, was actually the regulation of short-term rentals. Right? It's an emergent phenomenon in the city. It's actually pretty widespread usage now.
But I wonder what the progress of that is, because the enforcement isn't until what, April?
Well, the thing is that you can start regulating, January? You can start registering properties in October, so some are doing that now, and then the full regulation goes into effect in April.
It was April, okay.
But in fact, so that's when it'll go into effect, but the city council...
Enforcement though.
That's right.
And but inspection. So.
Right, but there was a certain wisdom in simply acknowledging that this is a phenomenon. You can't just sort of wish it away, So they found a nice middle ground that allowed people to do things legally that they were already doing, but to do so in such a way that it's actually will be regulated so that there'll be some safeguards.
Well, some of them wasn't necessarily legally what they're already doing because there was no law. But if the landlord said no subletting and they were actually using it as an Airbnb,
so far as it was essentially like a hotel use.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, I think it got to the operators that were buying up properties just to do that.
Right.
That I think was the big thing that it affected.
But the thing is that you know, because I've seen people apply for permits to run bed and breakfasts or you know, guest houses around the city, and there is a certain protocol you have to legally go through.
Right.
And most of the Airbnbs never went through anything like that. So there was a need.
Well, if it was a room in someone's house, they wouldn't.
Right.
But,
and I don't think there was any real stomach to over-regulate to the point where you're gonna, you know, require like the most top to bottom inspection of the properties that would drive every host out of the business or out of the desire to do it.
Right.
But, so I think they came up with a very good compromise. But here's the interesting thing. So the election happens, and I was thinking about it at various candidate forums and candidate literature, and I don't remember a single time it came up as something people should feel proud of or ashamed of. I think they should have felt proud of it, Craig Kelly in particular. But it just
seems to be the hot issue at the time because it already had been resolved in some ways. And
yeah, it's a funny thing. It's almost like you get more political capital by not resolving an issue than by resolving an issue.
It depends, I guess. He wasn't at all the forums either, I don't think. But,
well, I mean, I remember my friend David once pointing out that when the rent control days, it says the political sides of that coin benefited by the existence of a problem. And if ever they actually came to a compromise,
well, that's true.
it would,
You're right.
It would not be in their best interest. So.
Okay, so next half hour we'll cover that more.
We'll take a look back at 2017.